Hi, I'm Sarah Dubay, and I'm the Sisters and Program Specialist for Area 1 of the Girl Scouts of Central Texas Council. That means I get to do fun events like around the San Angelo, Brownwood, and Stephenville areas in Texas. Today, for Turbo Trefoils, we're going to be making a compost bin for our kitchen. So, why should we compost? Well, composting is a good way to sustainably use the foods and the waste that we create in our household to create something beautiful in the long run that'll help us sustain our diets as well as beautify our yards. So, what materials do we need for this activity? Well, for me, what I ended up getting was a plastic cup that I got from a restaurant order takeout soup. So this was actually a plastic soup cup with a sealable top. And that's basically what you're going to be looking for. A good substitution would be a coffee bin that's been emptied of the grinds. Or you can even do this with a mason jar if you have a silicone seal or any other type of, you can even use a deep Tupperware. As long as you have something that can poke holes into the top. So for me, the easiest way to poke holes into the top would have been to get a power drill and drill holes. But since I didn't have that, this is the top that I ended up making. And what I did for that is I got a knife and I made a cross section cut in the middle that was big enough to use a hole punch and slide in the bottom lip of the hole punch and punch in 4 holes, which lets air get into the compost bin. Why do we need air in a compost bin? Because compost is made through a process called decomposition of biodegradable materials. And so that leads us to the next part of our compost bin assembly, is actually gathering the materials that we need to make a compost starter. So you'll see in here, it looks like brown mush, but what it actually is a mix of two main ingredient types. And that is brown compost, which is combustible material made from dead twigs, leaves, grass, anything that you could be using as kindling in fire can be used as your brown compost because that releases carbon, which gives nutrients to plants. And then the other part of a compost bin is the coffee grinds, and that is called green compost. So it doesn't have to be coffee grinds. It can be anything that eventually releases nitrogen into your compost starter. And that includes eggshells, which is also something that I put in there. I just crushed it with a mortar and pestle first, but you can also just crush it with your hands. I just got fancy. And also some of the greens that I used in my omelet, like I use cilantro, I use spinach. Any type of green is amazing for compost. What you want to avoid though, is you want to avoid anything that's high in fat because that really, it doesn't really help the degradation of compost. It makes it spoil rather than decompose. So after you're done assembling all those ingredients, the last thing you want to do is you want to add in water because that really helps with the degradation of these organic materials. So a good rule of thumb to keep in mind when adding water to compost, as you can see, the materials in here are just moist. They're not soaked. So what you want to do is you just want to get it wet, but you don't want to drown them. So I added 3 parts. So just to review, that's 3 parts brown compost, 1 part green compost, and just enough water to keep it all moist. So after all that's said and done, some upkeep. You will keep this in your kitchen, or you can also keep this in another area, probably in your yard if the smell bothers you. Just make sure that it's kept in shade and that you open it up every once in a while and give it a really good stir so that it breaks up the gas pockets in the compost. So a good way to know that your compost is done, and don't expect this to be done within a week. This will take a couple months, but The effects are long-standing, and it is something you can just keep on adding to. But a good way to tell that it's done is when you open it up, you'll notice that there'll be steam coming off of it, as well as when you look in there, instead of being very visible pieces of grass, of organic material, it'll look a lot like soil. It'll look like very rich, deep, dark soil. And that's how you make a compost bin.